There is a moment most people recognize without being able to name it. You are standing in the grocery store and you are doing the math. Not because you decided to, not because you sat down and said, "Today I will budget," but because some part of your brain does it automatically now. Is this in the cart or is this back on the shelf? And you have done it so many times that it happens before you are even aware a decision is being made. That is a net worth experience. Not an income experience, not a budget experience, a net worth experience. And the unsettling part is that most people running that math in the grocery store aisle have no clear picture of when it stops. They assume it stops when they earn more. It does not. Income and net worth are not the same thing, and the confusion between the two is costing people years of their lives. Here is what does not get said in most financial conversations. Net worth does not change the texture of your life gradually, the way water slowly fills a glass. It changes at specific levels, thresholds. You cross one and something real shifts, not just in the number, but in how it actually feels to be you on an ordinary Tuesday. How decisions land, how risk registers, what your future looks like when you allow yourself to picture it without flinching. There are 3 of those levels. 3 coordinates on the map where the ground genuinely changes beneath your feet. And knowing exactly where they are, what triggers the shift, and what is waiting on the other side, might be the thing that changes how fast you reach the next one. Before we go into level 1, if you have ever felt like nobody actually explained how money works in plain terms, that is exactly what this channel exists to fix. Every week, one video, real mechanics, no jargon. Hit subscribe now so the next one finds you. Now, let's start at the level where almost everything begins. Level 1, the zero line. $0 to $10,000. The Federal Reserve's most recent survey of consumer finances puts the median American household net worth at just under $193,000. That number sounds like stability until you understand what is hiding underneath it. Because the median gets dragged upward by homeowners sitting on decades of equity and a thin layer of households with outsized wealth. The number that most closely matches what most Americans actually feel in their daily lives is far lower. According to the Federal Reserve, the bottom quarter of American households holds essentially zero or negative net worth, and roughly 1 in 8 families is technically in the red, meaning when you add up every dollar they owe and subtract it from every asset they hold, the result lands behind zero. The car loan, the student debt, the credit card balance outweighs everything they own. And they are not a fringe group. They represent tens of millions of households across this country. If you are in or near that group right now, something needs to be said clearly before anything else. That is not a moral failure. The structure of the American consumer economy was not designed to help people accumulate savings. It was designed to keep money moving. A consumer who owes is a far more profitable customer than a consumer who saves. And the entire architecture of credit, minimum payments, and lifestyle marketing was built with that fact at its center. But here is what truly defines life at this level. Not the specific dollar amount, not the income. The absence of a cushion. When you have no buffer and something goes wrong, the sequence is almost mechanical. The expense arrives. You assess. You cannot cover it from savings. The expense goes on a card, or you negotiate a payment plan, or you borrow from someone, or something goes unpaid. Each outcome costs you something, financially, and in a quieter way that compounds over time. And you repeat that cycle often enough that it starts to feel like simply how the world works for someone like you. It is not. It is the specific, predictable experience of having zero buffer. Researchers at Princeton published findings in the journal Science showing that financial scarcity creates a measurable cognitive load, not a vague emotional weight, but a quantifiable reduction in available mental bandwidth. The part of your brain running constant background calculations about whether you can cover the next expense is using processing power that would otherwise go toward longer time horizons, better decisions, creative thinking, and the kind of deliberate planning that actually moves the needle. Living at zero does not just feel hard. It measurably impairs the quality of the decisions that are supposed to get you out of it. And this is why the first level shift does not happen at $100,000. It does not even happen at $50,000. It happens far earlier than most people expect. Somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 in genuine liquid savings, money sitting in a separate account you do not habitually spend from. Something changes. Not dramatically, not in a moment you can point to, but the background calculations quiet down. The grocery store math gets softer. A $700 car repair becomes an inconvenience instead of a crisis. You can wait out a conflict at work instead of immediately backing down because you cannot afford to lose the job. That shift in how survivable a setback feels changes every single decision that follows it. You start thinking slightly further ahead. You start making slightly better choices because your brain is running on something closer to full capacity instead of dividing its attention between the present problem and the 17 possible next problems behind it. As of 2026, nearly 4 in 10 American adults say they could not cover a $1,000 emergency from savings without borrowing or selling something. That number is not a commentary on income. Many of those people earn decent salaries. It is a commentary on structure, on the absence of a cushion, and on a consumer financial system that makes it far easier to borrow the $1,000 than to quietly build it. The single highest leverage financial move available to most Americans right now is not the investment account. It is not the debt payoff campaign. It is the buffer. $1,000, then $2,500, then $5,000, sitting in a high-yield savings account that you treat like it does not exist until something real breaks. You build this before anything else, because without it, every forward step gets canceled by the next emergency. The buffer is not the goal. The buffer is what keeps you in the game long enough to reach the next level. Level 2, the invisible wall. $100,000 to $250,000. This is the level that surprises people most. Because you arrive here, you built the cushion, you got the high-interest debt under control, you started investing consistently, the number on the screen grew, and you expect to feel arrived, secure, like something permanent finally settled into place. And underneath all of it, there is still this quiet, persistent feeling of almost. That feeling is not irrational. It is not a mindset problem. It is structurally correct. And once you understand exactly what it is pointing at, it stops feeling like a failure and starts functioning like a map. The median American household net worth is right around $192,700. If you are in that range, you are the middle of the entire country. Not behind, median. But here is what the median conceals. For most households at this level, the single largest piece of that net worth is home equity, the dollar value locked inside the walls of a house they are still paying off. Home equity is real wealth on paper and nearly inaccessible in the moments that matter most. You cannot invest it during a market dip. You cannot use it to survive a 6-month job search. It sits. It appreciates. It shows up beautifully on a net worth calculation and almost nowhere else. Strip out home equity from the median American household, and the liquid investable net worth, the number that generates actual income and actual options, drops dramatically for most families in this range. Many households sitting at the $192,000 median are operating on liquid savings and investments closer to $50,000 or $60,000. And at that liquid number, one serious medical event, one extended layoff, one real market correction still hits close to bone. That is the invisible wall, where the number reads like stability and the feeling has not fully caught up with the number. But here is what is genuinely different at this level, and it matters. Your time horizon stretches. At level 1, financial thinking happens in weeks. This paycheck, next paycheck. Can you make it to the end of the month without something slipping? At level 2, you start thinking in years. You can survive a 6-month job search without a collapse. You can make a career move that will not pay off for 12 months and survive the wait. You can take the calculated risk instead of the nearest safe exit. The ability to wait, to choose a longer, better path instead of the closest door, is one of the most underrated financial advantages in existence, and it only appears when the cushion is real. This shift in time horizon is not abstract. It determines which jobs you take, whether you bring up the raise or swallow it for another year because you need the job too much to risk the friction. The person at level 1 takes the offer because rent is due in 10 days. The person at level 2 can say, "Give me a few weeks to consider this." And that pause, that ability to pause, rewrites the negotiation entirely. The second thing that shifts is healthcare behavior. This one almost never comes up in financial content, and it should. In the United States, medical care is a financial decision as much as it is a health decision. People without a financial cushion delay care. They skip the follow-up. They wait to see if the symptom goes away. They calculate whether the copay is worth it this month. This is not a character flaw. It is a rational response to financial fragility, documented at scale across multiple studies. When you have a real cushion at level 2, you go to the doctor when something feels wrong. That one behavioral change, that single shift from avoidance to action, affects your health outcomes in ways that compound across the next 20 years of your life. The third thing that shifts is visible in your investment account for the first time. If you have $150,000 invested at the market's long-run historical average of roughly 10% annually, that account generates approximately $15,000 in a single year without a single additional dollar contributed. More than $1,000 a month from doing nothing except staying in the market. For the first time, money is genuinely working alongside you instead of purely against you. The machine is running. And this is exactly where the level 2 trap opens its door. Because the growth is real and visible on the screen, and you work to build it, the temptation to finally let your lifestyle reflect the number becomes almost overwhelming. The slightly nicer apartment, the lease on the car you actually want, the version of everything that feels like it matches who you are becoming. Each choice feels earned. Each one is a dollar that leaves the machine and stops compounding forever. The people who stall at level 2 for years, and a significant share of working Americans are stalled here right now, are almost universally people who let lifestyle creep absorb the gains at the same rate the gains compound. The net worth number appears to inch upward on paper, while the gap to real freedom holds almost perfectly constant, because every growth in the account is matched by a corresponding growth in monthly obligations. You feel like you are climbing. The ceiling keeps rising at the same pace. The path through level 2 is not earning more. It is treating your investment account as a machine with a lock on it, not a reward for the work you have done, not a score that reflects your status, a machine that is building the thing that eventually sets you free. Every dollar that stays inside it earns rent. Every dollar extracted to upgrade something stops earning rent forever. That is the entire decision, restated for every choice at this level. Level 3, the flip, $500,000 to $1 million plus. Nobody talks about this level honestly, not because it is rare. Plenty of ordinary Americans reach it through decades of consistent habits rather than extraordinary income. But because the people who arrive here are almost always surprised by what actually changes, and surprised in a direction they did not expect. You assumed it would feel like arrival, like the final exhale, the chapter with a low hum of financial anxiety that has been running in the background of every decision for years finally goes quiet and stays quiet. And for a few weeks, it does feel something like that. Then the feeling settles into something quieter and more permanent and more powerful than a celebration. What actually shifts at level 3 is not your bank account. It is your relationship with time. A $750,000 portfolio invested at the market's long-run average generates approximately $75,000 in annual returns. That is not a number to retire on for most Americans. The median individual income in the US sits around $60,000. But it is a number that structurally changes the math of every single work decision you make. You could take 6 months away and the account would not crater. You could say no to the client who treats you badly, because the financial consequence of losing that relationship is not catastrophe. You could start the business that needs 18 months before it generates real revenue, because you can survive 18 months. The financial planning framework behind this has a name: the 4% rule, developed by financial advisor William Bengen in 1994 and pressure tested extensively against a century of market data since, states that you can withdraw 4% annually from a diversified portfolio and have a statistically high probability of the money outlasting a 30-year retirement. At $1 million, that is $40,000 a year. At $1,250,000, it crosses $50,000, approaching the median U.S. individual income. That is the coordinate where work transitions from something your financial survival requires to something you actually choose. That single shift from necessity to choice does something unexpected to almost every other area of your life. You negotiate differently, not because you announce your net worth to anyone, because your own behavior changes when the alternative to losing is survivable. You speak up in rooms where you previously went quiet. You draw lines in professional relationships you would not previously have risked drawing. You pursue things you shelved because the financial consequences of failing at them always felt unsurvivable. Fear, for most working Americans, is not purely an emotion. It is a financial experience. It rises from the specific, lived awareness that the margin between where you are and collapse is narrow. When that margin widens, the fear does not disappear, but it stops governing. Think about someone like Marcus, 44 years old, mid-level manager at the same company for 11 years. Not an outsized income, consistent 401k contributions from age 27, low-cost index funds, employer match fully captured, nothing complicated. By 43, his portfolio crossed $800,000. He did not retire. He did not make any dramatic announcement. What changed was that when his company restructured and asked him to absorb the responsibilities of 2 eliminated positions with no additional pay, he said no, calmly, clearly, with the kind of steadiness that comes from knowing the answer to losing this job is not ruin. Either the company gave him what he asked for, or he had months of portfolio returns to find something better. They gave him what he asked for. That is level 3 in a single conversation. The mistake that trips people at this level is the mirror image of the level 2 trap. At level 2, the risk is spending the gains faster than they compound. At level 3, the risk is paralysis. When the number is finally large enough to feel like something real you could genuinely lose, the pull towards safety, more cash, lower equity exposure, conservative allocations that cap the upside, becomes almost unbearable. And the research on this is consistent. People who reach level 3 and then stall or decline are disproportionately people who let loss aversion quietly dismantle the habits that built the number in the first place. The machine that created the outcome has not changed. It still runs on time, consistency, low costs, and a refusal to panic when the market moves. The number on the screen is larger. The rules are identical. Staying invested is the entire job at level 3, and it is harder than it sounds when the balance is big enough to feel like real money you could actually lose. Close. Here is what connects all 3 levels, the one thread running through everything we just covered. The difference between someone who crosses all 3 and someone who spends a lifetime circling the bottom is almost never income. People earning $500,000 a year live paycheck to paycheck in this country. Teachers and nurses and administrative coordinators with ordinary salaries retire at 65 with 7-figure portfolios. The separating variable is not what comes in. It is whether what comes in is building something that survives beyond the moment of arrival, or whether it is spent at the same rate it is earned. Each level asks something specific of you. Level 1 asks you to build the buffer before everything else. Not the investment account, not the debt payoff campaign, the buffer. Because without it, every step forward you take gets erased by the next thing that breaks. The buffer is not the destination. It is what keeps you in the game long enough to reach the destination. Level 2 asks you to keep the machine running faster than the lifestyle catches up. To hold a hard line between what the account is doing and what your daily life looks like. Every dollar that stays inside the machine is compounding toward the next level. Every dollar extracted to upgrade something stops compounding the moment it leaves. Level 3 asks you to stay calm, to trust the exact process that created the outcome you built, to resist the fear that always rises when the number is finally large enough to feel like something you could really lose, because the fear is the final trap, and the habit is still the answer. You are at one of these levels right now, or somewhere between them, and now you know exactly where the next shift sits, what triggers it, and what genuinely changes when you get there. Start tonight. One step. Build the cushion.